Thank you.
What is happening? I asked myself that question. No, I'm in
This?
Yes.
I know.
I think it's not used. Yeah. By the way, I have a chotzer downstairs. Okay. So we left off, if I remember correctly, on we're doing page 58. It talks about the importance of, to the extent that it's said the person lives outside of Eretz Yisrael, it's as if or almost equivalent to idol worship, unless the person has a good reason why they're living there.
Well, I guess I need to start getting a good reason, Rabbi.
We better have a good reason, yeah.
I mean, the peds are here some protocols.
So basically, this is one part. The second part is, it says on page 58b that we had, it reads that similarly, if a person leaves Babel, imagine a person leaves Babylon in order to go to Eretz Yisrael, that's also considered a no-no, and it's we know why not to leave Israel to go to other countries. What could be wrong with leaving Babylon? So the answer is that in those days, Babylon, Babel, was the center of Torah. That's where all the great scholars were. In fact, the Talmud that we have is called Talmud Bavli, the entire Talmud, which is the basis for everything in the oral Torah. Where was it studied and where was it put together? It was in Babylon. So at that time, Babylon was the center of Torah, the center where everybody was, and therefore you were not supposed to leave Babylon because that's the center of Torah. Now, so following this, on page 59, this part I only have in Hebrew, so I'm sorry, but this is one of the primary commentators on Gemara. His name is Meiri. You can see it on top of the page, Meiri. And when there's an arrow, he says like this: why is it that just like he's making his commentaries on these words, that just like it's prohibited to leave Israel to go to Babylon, it's prohibited to leave Babylon to go to other countries? The answer is, and that's the part that's underlined, Kol Mokim, which means every place, any place in the world, Shechachma v'yiras chet mitzuyin sham, that this is the source or the center for wisdom, Torah wisdom, and fear of God. Dinei k'Eretz Yisrael. It has the same halacha. It is equivalent to Eretz Yisrael. In other words, if it's a place with, in those days, that's where the rabbis were, that's where the scholars were, that's where the Torah teachers were. So in a certain sense, it has the same value and it's equivalent to Eretz Yisrael because that is the source of Torah, and that place became the source of fear of God. So this is the explanation why, yes, Chassidim would refer to the place where the Rebbe lived as a place which is like Eretz Yisrael. They would use that, remember I told you where Chassidus expressed himself, that the Rebbe's city is to me like Yerushalayim. What does that mean? So here we see where it says in Gemara that land, a location, a geographic location outside of Israel, But if this becomes a place which is the source and the center for Torah and fear of God, then it's like Israel, which means that for this chassid, if this is his Rebbe, that means for him, this is the source for Torah and for fear of God. So to him, this is like Eretz Yisrael. That's what we see over here. Now, the general idea why it would be such a harsh words like it's avodah zarah, like it's idol worship. I think one of the ways of explaining it on a simple level is like this. We brought this up many times that there are many sources in Torah. In fact, the whole book of Shir Hashirim is based on this, that the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people is compared to the relationship between husband and wife, or a bride and a groom. And there are many things in Torah, different sources, different places that always refer to Hashem as the husband and the Jewish people as the wife, and how it relates to many things, both on the simple level, on a Kabbalah level where it's explained. So think of it this way. If a couple is married, husband and wife are married, and the husband lives in one place, and the wife lives in another place. If there's something wrong in the marriage, we can understand, so they're living in separate places. But if they're married, and supposedly it's a good marriage, and you say to the husband, I don't understand, your wife lives here, why are you living there? And you say, oh, there's much more sunshine in this place. The grass is very green, there are a lot of trees here. It's near the water, near a beach. I love it here. So what would that mean? It's beautiful, but if you're not living in that house, there's something wrong with this relationship. That means if there would be a relationship the way a true relationship is supposed to be, and you're really loyal and dedicated to each other, that's where you would be. If Eretz Yisrael is where Hashem is found, which means this is Hashem's home, the whole country, of course, the Beis HaMikdash is the home, but the whole country is Hashem's land. That's why it's called the Holy Land. The presence of the Shekhinah is in Eretz Yisrael. So Hashem lives in one place, and I chose to live in another place. That means that I'm lacking in my loyalty. So in a subtle level, not God forbid, in literally, but in a certain way, it's like the idea of I'm being loyal and dedicated to something else other than to Hashem. So that's the reason why, generally speaking, one should be living in Eretz Yisrael. But what we see from this Gemara as well is that the place where a tzaddik lives, and especially if that tzaddik is the source of my inspiration, my Torah study, and my fear of God, then to me, this is like Eretz Yisrael. And then this quote that we said that a chassid expressed himself, that the Rebbe's shul is to me like the Beis HaMikdash, that you have on page 60. Let me show it to you again, because it came up before. Again, where it's underlined, where Lahem the Migdash Mat. The Gemara is quoting a pasuk, a verse in Yechezkel. This is the time where the Jewish people were in Babylon, and Hashem said to him that I have been there for them a minor sanctuary. What does it mean that is a minor sanctuary? So Rabbi Yitzchak said it means all the shuls and all the yeshivas in Babylon, even though it's not Israel, it's not Yerushalayim, it's not on the mountain, but we refer to it as a miniature Beis HaMikdash because all shuls and all yeshivas are like Beis HaMikdash in a smaller scale. Rebbe Lezer says it's referring to a very specific, one specific shul. It's the Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavel, the house of our teacher, Rav, in Babylon. So Rav was the leader of the generation, and he had a shul in Babylon, and that shul was considered like the Beis HaMikdash in a smaller scale. So the truth is both interpretations, both ways of explaining it are true. It's not that one argues with the other. In general, every shul and every yeshiva, being that this is a place that's designated and dedicated exclusively for godly service, so it's like a Beis HaMikdash in a smaller scale. But then there's one shul, which in that, being that it belonged to the leader of the generation, at that time it was Rav, so that shul is sort of more exclusively in the place of the Beis HaMikdash. So here we see, from everything we learned before and we're learning here, is that, yes, the Rebbe's shul is like the Beis HaMikdash to a chassid, The Rebbe's place, the city where he lives, is like Eretz Yisrael, or like Yerushalayim. And the principle behind all of it is all the same thing we've been learning from the beginning, that a tzaddik is a person that beyond the fact that he's brilliant when it comes to Torah knowledge, and beyond the fact that he's kind, beyond our comprehension, the goodness of his heart and the sensitivity and his compassion, it goes beyond all limits. And besides the fact that his davening is amazing, besides the fact that his observance of mitzvahs are meticulous, besides all that, the tzaddik is a person that there's a presence of godliness, a divine presence, the Shekhinah upon the tzaddik. So as a result of that, the city where he lives, the house where he's found, we learned before, the bed that he lies on, the stick that he's holding, everything that's associated with him has a certain presence of godliness. And that's the explanation to all those things that we spoke about. Any questions before we go on to the next part? Great. Next part. Page 62. Page 62 is what we find again in all Hasidic groups, not only Chabad, that one of the ways that the Rebbe would sort of give a bracha, it would be give something to the Chassid. So on top of the page it says wine. With our Rebbe, there would be a time in the year, a few times a year. It was always after Yom Tov was over, after any Chag was over, the Rebbe would make Havdalah. Then they would daven Ma'ariv. And after that, he would take the wine of Havdalah and distribute to every single person a little bit of wine. Usually took somewhere between 3 and 3.5 or more hours. Honey cake, that was Erev Yom Kippur. Erev Yom Kippur, it's a custom to distribute honey cake. In every shul, someone in the synagogue gives out honey cake to the people in the shul. In a family, the father or the mother will give everybody in the family honey cake, which is a way of saying you should have a sweet year. And the Rebbe would distribute honey cake to every chassid. Before Pesach, the Rebbe would distribute matzah to every chassid, not a big matzah, a piece of matzah. Actually, would give 2 pieces, being that there's 2 nights of a Seder. So I guess one was for the first night, one was for the second night. And he would distribute matzah, also stand for hours giving out the matzah. The dollars on Sunday, I think everybody is very familiar with that. Sefer means there were times of the year where the Rebbe gave out a Torah book. There were times where the Rebbe gave out a Tanya to every single person. In fact, when the Rebbe had his 80th birthday, that was Yud Aleph Nisan, a few days before Pesach, in the year 1982. So the Rebbe had it for bringing until about 3 o'clock in the morning. And 3 o'clock in the morning, he distributed Tanyas to every man. After the men were finished, he gave it to every woman and to every child, infant that was there, got a Tanya. I remember that this Farbrengen, all this lasted till like 6 in the morning. And there are times where Rebbe, we don't find this with our Rebbe, but in other Hasidic groups, where the Rebbe would give a handshake, and that was a way of giving a bracha. So again, I want to go through the sources like everything else. Where's the source for such a thing? Because I would think to give a bracha, you open your mouth and you say, you should be blessed. What do you need a hand? What do you need wine? What do you need cake? So first we'll go through the sources that we find this, and then we'll explain the reason behind it. Why isn't it just enough, at least sometimes, to do more than just speech, but actually give an object of one of these things that I mentioned? So let's first turn to page 64.
Where did the honey cake come from?
Where's what?
The honey cake come from? Did you buy it
Bakery.
from somewhere? Okay.
Came from a
Like, I
bakery.
just didn't know if the Rabbitzin was like back home, like cooking up a whole bunch of honey cakes.
No, they got it from the bakery.
All right.
Okay, I'm happy.
Good to know.
Yes. So this is regarding the concept of dollars. And again, the idea of giving dollars is not something new in Chabad. All Hasidic rabbis would give people coins, a dollar. One of the sources for this is this Gemara. You're looking at Gemara right now, where the Gemara says as follows. There's a verse, I underlined it, where it's on page 64, where it says, you have blessed whatever he has undertaken. This is talking about Eov, Job. The Gemara asks, what does it mean? Kol haneitel prutum Eov midbarich. Whoever took a prut, whoever took a coin from Eov was blessed. In other words, just by taking a coin from someone who was a tzaddik, that brought blessing. How exactly and why through a coin? I guess we'll leave that for later. We'll go into it. There's another example. If you turn to page 65, this is a story in the books of the prophets, book of Shmuel, where it describes the beginning stage where David HaMelech, King David, was preparing Yerushalayim and the mountain, preparing it for the future building of the Beis Hamikdash. The first thing was they brought the Aron, which is the ark that had in it the luchas, the 2 tablets. They brought it from wherever it was to the holy mountain, which is in Yerushalayim. And it was a big celebration. And then it says, after the celebration, you can look at it in the Hebrew and the English, both are underlined, he distributed to all the people, to the entire multitude of Israel, men and women alike, to each person, he gave them a loaf of bread, a portion of beef, and 1 container of wine. And then everybody left home. So obviously, this is King David giving out a portion of bread, giving out wine, giving out a piece of meat. Obviously, he wasn't just giving it to them because of helping their economic situation, but this was more about something spiritual that was related to their experience of bringing the Aron and the Luchas, the holiest articles that we have, to Yerushalayim. So it's a form of a bracha. Another source, page 66. Let's look where it's underlined. Also, this is Gemara you're looking at. It's a story. Reb Chia bar Abba, Reb Chia, the son of Abba, was once ill. He was sick. So Rabbi Yochanan went to visit him, which one sage was sick, and another sage went to visit him. And he said to him, are these afflictions dear to you? The reason why he said that was because if, God forbid, a person goes through suffering, it says that the suffering is an atonement. So maybe you're appreciating the fact that you're going through this suffering because it's an atonement. So he answered him, Loi hein, Loi schara. I'm not interested in the suffering, and I'm not interested in the rewards. I'd rather not have it. When he said that, Amalei, the visiting rabbi, said to him, Havli yotcha, give me your hand. Yavle yodei, he gave him his hand, he shook his hand, and as soon as the hands locked, he stood up and he was healed. A miracle. That's the story in Gemara. So now the Gemara continues. Rabbi Yochanan, this visiting rabbi that miraculously healed the other rabbi, he became sick. All the Gaber Reb Chanina. So a different sage whose name was Rabbi Chanina came to visit him. And he said the same thing to him. Are these afflictions dear to you? He saw that he was suffering. And maybe you appreciate the suffering. And he said to him the same words, Lo yehein v'lo yischaron. I'm not interested in the suffering, and I'm not interested in the rewards. And he says to him, Havli yotcha, give me your hand. He gave him his hand, and he stood up, and he was healed. So here we see from Gemara that giving a handshake, again, one tzaddik giving his handshake to another person is a way of transmitting blessing. And by giving the handshake, he miraculously was able to heal him. While we're doing the Gemara, we can't go to the next page unless we answer the obvious question, which the Gemara asks. The Gemara asks, next line, which is not underlined, why did Rabbi Yochanan need the other rabbi to help him? He just did it himself to someone else, so he could have done it to himself. And the Gemara answers, and these words became very famous words, Ein chavush mater atzmo mebeis hasurim. A captive can't release himself from prison. He needs someone who's outside of the prison to unlock him so he can get out. In other words, when someone else was sick, he was able to do what he did to bring them to complete health. But when he himself became sick, he couldn't do it to himself. He needed someone else outside to bring him to freedom. and in this case, the healing. The reason why these words are famous, these are the words that are used in reference to the idea that every person should have a mentor, every person should have a good friend that they can talk to hear an objective opinion, because even though a person might think to himself, I am intelligent, I know my way around, I've helped many people regarding various issues in their life, why do I need to turn to someone else when I have an issue? I'll figure it out myself. So the answer is because ein chovesh mater atzmim beis asurim. A person who's locked into a situation themselves cannot unlock themselves because they're in it. They need someone else from the outside to unlock them. So basically, this means that even someone who is not only a scholar and smart, but someone who actually helps other people with advice, even if he helps hundreds of people or thousands of people, but when then he himself needs advice, he's no longer objective, and then he needs to speak to someone else who's objective, means not locked in the situation, and they could see things very clearly and guide them how to. I don't know if you ever had this experience where maybe a friend or someone shared something with you about a certain problem, and you gave them advice, and they said, I can't believe it, it's so simple. Why didn't I think of it? And the answer is because they're not objective. They're so involved in the situation, it's very hard to see things clearly. Another person, even if they're not the most brilliant person on the planet, just by the fact that they're objective, could see things clearly, and they could give me advice on how to get out of wherever I'm tangled up in. But the reason why I brought this Gemara was mainly for the first part, where we see a source that giving a hand is a form of transmitting bracha. Another example, this is Chumash, page 67, where this is the famous Parsha Pinchas, where Moshe Rabbeinu appoints his successor. His successor was Yeshua. He's the one who led the Jewish people into Israel. He became the leader of the next generation. And here is the Parsha where Hashem told him that Yeshua is the successor and you should appoint him. And how did he do that? So it says in the Chumash, if you look on top of the page where it says Pasuk 23, he laid his hands on him, put his hands on his head, and he commanded him, just like Hashem commanded through Moshe. Which means he put his hands on his head, and in that way he appointed him. But it wasn't just putting his hands on his head. By putting his hands on his head, that's how he transmitted the powers of leadership and the power of wisdom that he had. He transmitted that to his successor. Let's look at Rashi. Rashi makes an issue of the fact that it says he put his hands, plural. Rashi said he did it generously, over and above what he had been commanded. Hashem told him, put your hand on him, hand meaning singular, but he used both hands, which means he fashioned him like a vessel filled to overflowing, filling with generously with his wisdom. So we see an interesting thing. He's giving him wisdom. What does that have to do with the hand? It's wisdom. So we see that even though it's wisdom, something totally spiritual, like I said, it's wisdom, it's the power of leadership. Nevertheless, it is transmitted through the hand. So by putting his hands on his head, that gave him the wisdom. If you would put one hand on his head, that's a limited amount of wisdom. By putting both hands on his head, that's twice as much or much more wisdom. It's like a faucet. If you turn on one faucet, you have so much water. If you're on two faucets, you have much more water. So what we see from this, and we'll soon see from another example, is that even though we're dealing with something spiritual, like a blessing or wisdom or leadership or other ways of empowering, nevertheless, it could be transmitted through physical hands. 68 is another example, not as clear, but it is clear if you look at it closely. This is a story which is actually related to us right now, to Purim. Purim is the time that I'm sure you learned in class. We did it in level 2. You must have learned about it in level 1. Haman was the descendant of Amalek. Amalek was a tribe that attacked the Jews when they went out of Egypt. And this pasuk describes that war. So Yeshua was the general, and the Jews were fighting a war with Amalek, Moshe was sitting on the mountain and he lifted his two hands like this. And it says in the Chumash, if you look on top of the page, when his hands were lifted, the Jewish people prevailed. They were defeating them. When he lowered his hands, then the other tribe, the Amalekim, were defeating the Jews. So therefore, it says in the next verse that Moshe's brother and his brother-in-law, Aaron and Hur, they both stood on his side. They helped him keep his hands up, and that's how they won the war. So again, we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu transmitting and empowering the people with the power to fight this enemy and to eliminate the enemy. So it's a spiritual power that he's giving them. So what does it do with the hands? The hands are up, it's one way, it's down, it's another way. So we see from this that even though we're dealing with spiritual power, but nevertheless, it's being transmitted through his hands. And if the hands are up, it goes one way. And if it's down, it goes another way. We're not finished. Here's another example. Page 69. This is one more about the hands. This is a parsha which you already learned. You studied this earlier in the year, where Yaakov was giving a bracha to his children. Yosef brought his two children to Yaakov, Ephraim and Manasseh, and Yosef saw that his father, looking at page 69, he put his right hand on Ephraim, which was younger, and his left hand on Manasseh, who was older. And Yosef was disturbed by that. So he took his father's hands and he tried to change it. He thought maybe his father, he's older and it's harder for him. He took his father's hands and he basically tried to change it. In other words, he put the older boy by his father's right side, put the younger boy by his father's left side, and expected his father, Yaakov, to put his hands like that and give them both a bracha. Instead, Yaakov went like this, put his right hand on this child who was younger, the left hand on this child that was older, and he gave a bracha. And Yosef was disturbed and said, my father, this one is older, this one's younger. He says, I know. And nevertheless, he did it that way. And the reason is because he saw through prophetic vision that the younger son is going to have greater merit than the older son. And the older son had a descendant who became a king. His name was, that unfortunately, he was very destructive. So what do we see? I mean, what's the difference? The right hand, the left hand, this head, that head. So we see, no, and you give a bracha, you put your hands on the person's head. And yes, there's a difference of the right hand and the difference of the left hand, even though it's all spiritual, but it does go through the hands. So you see, when you go to a wedding, for example, at the Badekanish, when the chassan comes to cover the kala's head, so the father, the chassan, the father of the kala, or the grandparents, they put their hands on top of the person, the kala's head, and they give her a blessing. The only difference is the father of the kala could put his hand on her, and the father of the chassan will keep his hands away because it's not his daughter. But the idea of putting the hands is because through the hands, you're able to transmit blessing. And in fact, there are plenty of communities where they have a custom that every single Friday night, the children, before they go to shul, the father gives the children a blessing by putting the hands on their head. Chabad doesn't have the custom Friday night. We have the custom once a year on Yom Kippur. Why not? Because we have to be different.
Like, it's such a cute custom.
Yeah.
So
I don't know the reason.
my dad benches us every Friday night, but
What?
my dad benches us every Friday night. That's what his dad did. But if you become Chabad, because you're like a family of Bolsheviks, then can you keep that custom?
Yes, I think when you become Chabad, you try to add, not take away. I don't know if you ever noticed a lot of Chabad people that have the long payas or the up hats or long coats, even though they're young Bachrim. A lot of them would ask the Rebbe, now that they're Chabad, they want to change, and the Rebbe would say to them, when you're Chabad, you add, you don't take off, you don't detract.
Why does the hat point down?
What?
Why does the hat point down?
Ah.
Didn't the Rebbe say
To
that,
be
like,
continued.
like you're supposed to like tap in to the attachments? Or, like,
I know the Rebbe said that.
No, not. I don't know what, but I heard somewhere that it's like to like integrate yourself a little bit, but you should still like your head should be in the right place, but your body can be in the gashmis as long as it's like always with that thing.
I mean, in general, people who had a position of, let's say, they were rabbis or a head of yeshivas would wear their hat up. The previous Rebbe wore his hat up. The other Rebbe's what the hat up was some sort of a indication that this is a person who's a little bit more removed from other people, and therefore they're wearing their hat different. The Rebbe, who became Rebbe, never changed from wearing the hat the way he always wore it, which is like this, like all of us. So again, Chassidim interpreted it because even though the Rebbe became the Rebbe and the leader, but his whole approach was that he is sort of brought himself down to every single person, to every single place, in a way more than all other previous generations. But I don't know if that's really what's behind it.
If you become Chabad, called Shuba, and you like the children, benching the children of you, can you add that?
Yes, yes, it's perfectly okay. In fact, you're adding bracha, that's fine. Yeah, one more minute. Let me just do number 70. Number 70 is about the wine. Where's the source? So this is a source in the Chumash. Later we find this in the Shulchan Aruch. That when you do the benching, the grace after meals, you make the blessing on a cup of wine. That cup is called Kais Shel Bracha, which means it's a cup that gives bracha. In fact, I told you the Rebbe would, after that, take this wine from the benching, use this wine for Havdalah, and then distribute it to thousands of people. But in the Chumash here, it says that the angels came to Avraham Avinu, and they said to him, "Where is Sarah?" Why did they ask where Sarah is? So look what Rashi says. They knew where Sarah was, but they inquired to make known her modesty, to endear her more to her husband. That's one explanation. The second explanation is they asked where she is in order to send her the wine of bracha. She needed a bracha to have a child, so they sent her the wine. And apparently the bracha that they gave that she should have a child, which she did the following year, at the age of 90, was transmitted through the wine. So we see, yes, bracha is transmitted through wine, bracha is transmitted through the hands, bracha is transmitted through $1. Now the question is why? Why can't you just give a bracha verbally? And the answer is to be continued. Yeah. And Mirza Hashem, I'm wishing everybody a happy Purim. I drank a full cup, yeah. A happy Purim, and try to remember that the main thing is to be happy. Don't allow anything to get in the way. It should be the simcha.
About the Hashem, male or female? People that, because there are some women that